Emily, I want a divorce. While I was doing the dishes, my husband John blurted that out unexpectedly. What? Why? I was taken aback by the suddenness. You see, I'm about to come into $3 million. That's a hell lot of money, right? But it's mine. I don't intend to share it with you. What does that have to do with a divorce? The truth is, I stayed with you for the money, Emily. Your salary isn't much, but it's better than nothing. So I reluctantly carried on with our married life. But once I get those $3 million, I won't need you anymore. I want to live a relaxed life alone. So please, let's part ways. Fine. If you have that much money, you can sell the house. It will cover the mortgage too. John was a bit surprised that I agreed without any resistance. This would mean goodbye to my tiresome life up to now. I slammed some papers onto the table in the living room. My name is Emily. I love children and work as a preschool teacher. I met John, who was 2 years older than me, through a friend's introduction, and we've been married for almost 8 years now. We bought a house thinking about having children, looking forward to happy days ahead. That's what I thought during our newlywed days. But soon after we got married, John's attitude completely changed. He became more and more obsessed with money. Before we got married, he would tell me my job was a wonderful job, but then he started saying, Emily, all you have to do is play with kids. I'm working my ass off here. You've got a good gig. I bet they call people like you a freeloader. Those words soon became his catchphrase. Being a daycare teacher is tough too. Each child has a different personality, and above all, we are entrusted with their lives. There's no such thing as an easy job. But he didn't listen and ignored my complaints. I was so frustrated and upset. The reason we don't have children, even though we've been married for 8 years, is also due to this. He would say, if you have time to make babies, you should work more. Don't tell me you're planning to quit your job using a baby as an excuse. We have a mortgage and taxes to pay, you know? What are you thinking? Don't ever talk about having kids again. I was yelled at and couldn't say anything back. Sure, John is older and has a career, so his income is higher than mine. But the gap isn't that big. It's only a difference of a few $1,000s, and yet he acts high and mighty every time. I take pride in my job and feel fulfilled every day. So being looked down upon for such unreasonable reasons was humiliating. John's words pierced my heart, and I would often cry quietly by myself. And lately, John has been saying he wants to be alone more often. In reality, I could live by myself, but I've been sticking with you out of necessity. Don't forget that. Why does he always look down on me? Perhaps it has to do with John's increased overtime at work. It's because you're not working hard enough that I have to work overtime to make ends meet. How about being a little grateful? I was often blamed like this. But even though he's working overtime, it doesn't seem like his salary is increasing. I can tell because I carefully check our finances. But the salary doesn't really change much, does it? Even though you talk big. Maybe that ticked him off, because John got angrier than I've ever seen him before. Who do you think is making this lifestyle possible? If I wanted to, I could dump you easily. Be prepared. He said something that sounded almost like a threat. He wasn't like this before we got married. Since that incident, our conversations as a couple have steadily decreased. Then, one day, something happened that pushed me further into despair. When we visited John's parents during Thanksgiving, his mother served tea and said, "You two have been married for 8 years now, right? Emily, you used to say you wanted a child soon. Considering your age, have you decided on how many children you want?" I thought this was the perfect time to discuss the issue, so I was about to open my mouth. But then, "Mom, we're not having kids. Emily and I talked it over and decided." "Oh, is that so?" "Yeah. She said she absolutely hates the idea of taking care of kids, whether it's at work or home." "What? Wait a minute. What are you saying?" "Mom, can you not bring it up so much? It's stressful for Emily, too." "No, that's not what Well, if that's what you two have decided, it's okay to just be the two of you. It's certainly hard work." With that, my mother-in-law left the room and I was left unable to discuss anything. On the car ride home, I asked, "Why would you tell such a lie? I love children and want them, but you keep saying you don't want them yet." The fact that we can't afford to have a child because you don't work full-time is true. Only start talking when you start earning as much as me. I thought preschool teachers earned more. What a disappointment. I don't like the way you're saying that. From the beginning, I never liked children and I never planned on having them. Children are just a financial burden. I'd rather spend that money on myself. While I was shocked, John just laughed. You should never mix personal matters with work. I knew that, of course, but I couldn't help but dwell on this issue. Children are sensitive to these things. A girl named Amy from the class I'm in charge of approached me. Miss Emily, what's wrong? You seem less cheerful today. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to worry you. I'm fine, I said, patting her head. Amy wasn't the type to stand out, but she was very mature and kind for her age. She must be receiving a good upbringing. You're not fine. You're usually much more cheerful. I don't want to see Miss Emily like this, she said sadly. I felt terrible for causing such a young child concern. Maybe my daddy can help with Miss Emily's problem. He's a superhero and helps lots of people. He's picking me up tomorrow, so I'll tell him. Amy's mother usually picked her up, but she said her father was coming to the preschool tomorrow because her mother was busy. I told her I was fine, but Amy insisted on introducing me. I hadn't really spoken to Amy's father since I met him at the school entrance ceremony, so I was a bit nervous. The next day, as Amy said, her father came to pick her up. Thank you for looking after Amy. I'm her father. I've heard a lot about you from my daughter. I really appreciate that she seems to be having a good time. Oh, not at all. We're the ones who should be thanking you. Amy is a very kind girl. I got the impression that he was a very polite person, but I didn't really feel like sharing my personal affairs, especially because they were quite embarrassing. They were not something that could be easily spoken about. I can tell that Miss Emily is worried about something, so I want you to talk to my dad. Thank you, Amy. I really appreciate your concern, but I understand how you feel. It can be difficult to confide in someone, even if they're a close acquaintance. However, my daughter is really worried about you. If there's anything going on, please let me help. Surprised, I received a business card from Amy's father and saw his title. But looking back, I think that was the moment my fate changed. That was when I decided to take revenge on John. While I was preparing for that moment, John suddenly approached me. Hey, how about we get a divorce? It was after a long time that John came home early, and we had dinner together. My hands, which were washing dishes, stopped there. Perhaps he thought I was bewildered by the suddenness. John grinned unpleasantly. You might not like it, but my feelings won't change. May I ask why? A huge sum of money is coming in. Do you want to know how much? $3 million. $3 million! John's mouth did not stop, even though I hadn't asked anything. I've been with you because I wanted money. Compared to me, it was just a drop in the bucket, but better than nothing, right? But now, I have $3 million, so I don't need you anymore. So, let's split up quickly. You've probably had enough of being a leech. Where did all that money come from? There were a lot of things I wanted to say, but first, I asked John the question that came to mind. That's none of your business. We're strangers now. Okay, I understand. Let's separate then. Perhaps surprised by my swift reply, John looked a bit taken aback. By the way, I have no intention of living in this small house anymore. After all, I have $3 million. I'm thinking of using this money to live in a mansion, so I've decided to sell this house too. That's fine. I'll start looking for an apartment then. You can pay off the rest of the mortgage on this house, right? Yeah, I'll pay it all off. That much, at least. I guess that's natural. Our positions are different, after all. Thanks, that would be great. With that, I decided to take action. John watched me move briskly with a curious look, and so began a series of busy days, packing and looking for an apartment. Once the divorce was more or less settled, I set up a time to talk to John again. I'll leave the mortgage payments to you, John. I don't want to argue about whether I set it or not in the future, so I've prepared a written agreement that includes all these points. Please sign it. Fine, as long as you don't start grumbling about it later. I always wondered why John always had to add an unnecessary remark. A surge of irritation welled up in me, but I managed to keep my temper. John, who had been perusing the divorce agreement, suddenly stopped in his tracks. Hey, what's this alimony section about? Why should I be the one to pay? If anything, Emily, who doesn't work full-time, should be the one paying. You thought you could hide it from me? You're so naive, I replied, calmly laying out some documents on the table. Upon seeing this, John's face turned increasingly pale. Thanks for all the overtime work you've been doing every day. I appreciate all your hard work. You love your job, don't you, John? It must be fun to be with your mistress. There was a photo of John and a woman arm in arm, looking quite friendly with each other. This woman, she's just a junior colleague. It just looks like we're arm in arm. Is this your attempt to catch me out? You're still going to say that, huh? Then how about this? I thrust another photo at him. It showed John and the same woman entering a hotel. I thought this would break him, but for some reason, he lashed out again. This must be a fabrication. Don't you know how advanced photo manipulation technology is these days? Do you really think you can fool me with this? I let out a heavy sigh. I hadn't expected him to be this stubborn, but I had anticipated this and made preparations. This isn't something I took. I think they'll be here soon. Just then, the doorbell rang. John looked flustered, unsure of what was about to happen. I went to the front door to greet them and led them back to the living room. This is my attorney. These evidences were requested from a private detective agency, so there's no way they could be fabricated. If you have any doubts, should I call them right now? Pleasure to meet you. I'm Kessler, Emily's attorney. From now on, we'll be discussing the divorce proceedings through me. Now, do you have any issues with the photographs? I'll be happy to answer all your questions. Seeing Kessler's confident smile, John started to panic. It turned out that John's claim of working overtime because he was busy was a lie. The private detective agency found out that he was actually leaving work on time. The reason his income hadn't changed was because of this. If he wasn't working overtime, there would be no increase. He was spending his nights with his mistress. When his affair was exposed, one thing finally made sense to me. It was when John started saying he wanted to be alone. He probably said that because he wanted to be with his mistress. The lawyer I hired this time was a highly skilled one. It was Amy who connected me with him. Amy's father happens to be the CEO of a well-known group. Her words about her father being a superhero weren't a lie after all. Upon hearing the situation, Amy's father immediately contacted a private detective agency and introduced me to a lawyer. I thought it was a bit over the top, but the more I looked into John, the more his flaws started to emerge. And that made me so angry that I decided to go all out. You're acting as if this is all you're doing. You want alimony? I can give you that. I have $3 million. I can easily pay you that. If you're done here, just leave. I never want to see your face again. I would have left even if you hadn't said that. If anything comes up in the future, let's talk through the lawyer. Don't come to me directly. Who would ever want to see you? He spat out these last words. I silently packed my things and left the house. Perhaps if it had been anyone but John, it might have had more impact, but he was himself to the end. Just how arrogant can one be? I wondered as I left the house. I thought my tale of revenge had come to an end. Then, a few months later, just as I was getting used to my new life in the apartment where the incident occurred, something big changed. My source of stress was gone. At first, of course, I was shocked by the fact that I had divorced, but I didn't even have a shred of love left for John. That's why I also felt a sense of relief. Despite that, he had the audacity to barge into my new apartment. Please, will you listen to me? I beg of you. He shouted so loudly at the entrance that I reluctantly let him in. What on earth do you want? I told you I don't want anything to do with you anymore. He was smirking as he looked around my apartment. I found it utterly disgusting. Well, you've got a nice place here for being separated from me. If there are 2 rooms in this spacious apartment, I can make one my room right away. What are you talking about? There's no way I'm going to live with a stranger. Don't be so cold. We were once a couple, remember? We've officially become strangers through the legal process. Now what is it you want? Don't talk like that, Emily. It's scary. Well, I just realized that I need Emily. I bet you'd have a better life with me, wouldn't you? You were living in a mansion with your mistress. I guess you were just with me out of necessity. I don't need to be with you. No, that was just a moment of confusion. I need Emily. You're just being stubborn, aren't you? Didn't you tell me you didn't need me anymore because you were getting $3 million? Why don't you find your next wife with that money? No, you're wrong. John started crying all of a sudden. The truth is, I said I was getting $3 million because I thought I had won the lottery, but when I looked closely, the numbers were wrong. I jumped the gun. What on earth is he talking about? I was so dumbfounded that I couldn't say a word. I've been looking for a reason to leave you. That's why I think I misread the numbers. I thought that if I got $3 million, I could divorce you right away and do whatever I wanted. When he saw the cold look in my eyes, he hurriedly added, "But I want you to feel reassured. I ended my relationship with her. From now on, I'll only love Emily. So let's start over. You still love me, don't you?" What are you saying? I don't know anything about that. You can do whatever you want. Please help me. I thought I was getting $3 million and I badmouthed my boss and quit my job. I can't ask him to take it back now. And what is worse, as soon as my love found out I didn't have any money, she stopped contacting me. It seemed like John was abandoned by his mistress. Of course, no one would want a man who was divorced, jobless, penniless, and homeless. That's why I can't pay my loan and I don't have a place to live. Emily, you're my only hope. I told you, I don't know anything about it. If you stay here any longer, I'll take appropriate measures. Did you forget about the pledge you signed when we divorced? If you break your promise, I'll claim 5 times the alimony. That's enough! You? John, in a fit of anger, raised his hand. Is that what you're going to do? If you lay a hand on me, I'll call the cops right away. You could be charged with assault. This apartment complex has security cameras, so even if you run, your face will be clearly captured. John turned pale at these words. Get out, now, or I'll report you for trespassing. At the mention of a report, John fled. There was a sound like someone tumbling down the stairs, but I simply shut the door without concern. Since then, John never came back. Later, my in-laws came to apologize to me. They seemed not to have anticipated such a situation. When I asked them about John's situation, they told me he had fractured his leg falling down the stairs that day. He had to be hospitalized for 2 months, which caused his expenses to pile up. However, he also had a mortgage and alimony to pay me, so he needed to find work as soon as possible. He begged his boss to let him work from home and rescind his resignation, but he had been quite rude when he quit, and they wouldn't let him come back. My in-laws fronted the alimony, so he also had that and the mortgage to repay. He's going to have a tough time. He really brought this on himself. Once things had settled down, I went to visit Amy's house. When I told Amy's father that everything had been resolved, he was very pleased. I've always wanted to meet you since Amy often talks about you. I didn't expect it to happen like this. I just made a few calls. I'm glad it worked out. I'm so happy to see Miss Emily smiling again. She could really be called a life changer. I'm overwhelmed with gratitude. My husband looked down on me, but because I was a preschool teacher, I am who I am now. I deeply felt the importance of cherishing every encounter. I love my job more than ever and want to keep doing my best. Every time she gets a chance, my daughter-in-law, Jasmine, treats me like a penniless pensioner. I came all this way to visit, and this is what I get? Such a shabby place. So disappointing. Well, I guess this is what you get on a pension. I can take whatever is said about me, but I can't stand it when someone else insults this shop. It was my son Louis, who started speaking when my anger reached its peak. My name is Susan. At 65, I'm still quite active for my age. My husband John passed away 3 years ago at the age of 70. He fought hard against liver disease, but sadly he couldn't beat it. However, John, ever the craftsman, fought bravely without much complaint until the end. John was 8 years older than me. In the back of my mind, I had always been prepared for the possibility that John might pass away before me. However, his departure came sooner than I had expected. For a while, I was like a shell of my former self, but thanks to friends and neighbors, I gradually regained my spirit. Now I'm enjoying my time alone, attending karaoke classes, a hobby of mine from way back, and going to the theater with friends. Another significant event happened after John passed, and things settled down. My eldest son, Louis, got married. I thought it would be something to cheer me up, but John and I had 2 children. Our eldest, Louis, is now 37 years old and works as an IT engineer. He's freelancing now, mainly working from home, and apparently he's earning more than he did as a salaried employee. Teresa, the daughter and sister of Louis, is currently on an overseas assignment. She hardly ever gets to come back home. Louis finally married in his mid-30s, but for Teresa, it seems her job comes first, and marriage seems far off for her. Speaking of putting the job first, that's Louis's wife, Jasmine. Jasmine is 9 years younger than Louis, currently 28 years old. An even larger gap than between John and me. I first met Jasmine 2 years ago. Louis said, "I've decided to marry this person," and brought Jasmine to our house. Louis was attracted to the hard-working Jasmine, and surprisingly, it was Jasmine who strongly desired to marry. A slender beauty, a well-tailored suit from a high-end brand. She was the epitome of a career woman, just like those seen in TV dramas, exuding an aura of competence. And her views, expressed during our family meetings, were quite modern. We want to be a couple who respect each other's independence and freedom. Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I'll give up on advancing my career. I'll work hard. I think we probably won't have children. According to Jasmine, child-rearing is a hindrance to career advancement. She wants to earn her own money, enjoy freedom without being tied down by family life, even after marriage. However, I was somewhat taken aback by what Jasmine said next. But living on a pension really seems like living in poverty, doesn't it? Money is really important. I have to work hard and earn. Living in poverty? I don't know what kind of lavish lifestyle the career woman Jasmine dreams of, but it's none of her business. I'm quite satisfied with my current life, which suits my means. Even the usually calm Louis had to gently chide her. "Hey Jasmine, don't say things like that." He gently chided her, but it was a worrying first encounter with Jasmine. The first Christmas after Louis and Jasmine got married, they came to visit my house. Maybe because of her busy job, as soon as Jasmine arrived. I'm so tired," and said that, then just sat on the sofa and didn't move. And even on Christmas, she seemed preoccupied with work calls, staring at her mobile phone and tablet, not moving an inch from the sofa. "Louis, I want some coffee. Louis, I'm a bit hungry. Bring me some snacks." From the sofa, Jasmine gave orders, and Louis dutifully brought her coffee and snacks. It's good that she's dedicated to her work, but as a mother, it pains me a bit to see my son so casually used by Jasmine. Moreover, during their stay at our house, Jasmine never once helped in the kitchen. It was always Louis who helped with meal preparations and washing up. Quietly, I asked Louis, who was helping me with the dishes, "Hey Louis, doesn't Jasmine do any housework?" "Well, I'm mostly working from home as a freelancer, so I usually handle the housework. Jasmine has a commute and often comes home late. Plus, she travels a lot for work, so she's not home much. There's not much to do in terms of housework anyway." It's different from our time. Besides, Jasmine's been given more responsible work lately, so she's busy, you know? We're an independent couple after all. Jasmine likes to manage her own stuff, though. I mostly take care of the house. Huh. Well, if you're okay with it, I won't interfere. Jasmine can be a bit harsh in her way of speaking, but think of it as her fighting through the tough world of work. Please be a bit more understanding, Mom. He's such a mild-mannered eldest son. However, since then, it's only been Louis who comes home for summer vacations and Christmas. Jasmine's too busy with work to come. That's what Lewis always says when he visits. Jasmine has a lot of business trips, works on weekends often. Recently, she's hardly at home. She must be really busy. Yeah. For me, having some reservations about Jasmine, it's admittedly easier when Lewis comes alone. Every time Lewis came back home, I noticed his face seemed a bit more worn, which concerned me a little. Then, as summer reached its peak, I received a call from Lewis. Hello? This summer break, Jasmine and I will come to visit for the first time in a while. Is that so? It's been a long time since both of you visited together. Yeah, looking forward to it, Mom. I felt relieved hearing Lewis's cheerful voice. And when the summer break came, Lewis and Jasmine returned home. This year's summer was reportedly the hottest on record. Our air conditioner at home was running non-stop, but due to its age, it wasn't cooling very well. I'm home. Hello there. As soon as Jasmine entered our house, she exclaimed, It's so hot! Susan, is the air conditioner even working? Hey Lewis, lower the temperature. She went straight to the sofa, and as usual, began giving Lewis casual orders. Ugh, it's still hot. Is this air conditioner broken? But I guess you can't afford a new one on a pension. Lewis, a hand fan, please. I had a bad feeling that Jasmine seemed even more overbearing than before. Also, compared to when I first met her, her makeup and clothing seemed flashier. I'm going to say hello to Dad. Saying that, Lewis went to greet John's photograph. When I returned with the coffee for the two of them, I found Lewis in front of the photo. And next to Lewis, Jasmine was not there. Surprisingly, Jasmine was still confidently sitting on the sofa, legs crossed, fiddling with her mobile phone. She drank the cold coffee I made without even a word of thanks. I didn't want to nag Jasmine, but even I couldn't hold back this time. Can't you put the phone away just for now? Then Jasmine replied, I have important work responsibilities. Well, Susan, living on a pension, you wouldn't understand. What does living on a pension have to do with this? I wanted to say something back to Jasmine, but she spoke up again. The reason Susan can live on a pension is because of the money we work hard to earn. So as someone who works hard every day, I don't have to move in front of people living on pensions. Really? Such excuses. Is this what being weathered by the rough seas of society does to a person? I felt bad for Lewis, but I didn't want Jasmine to come over anymore. Knowing Jasmine wouldn't help in the kitchen, I had made a dinner reservation at a restaurant for their visit. That restaurant holds special memories, not just for me, but for our whole family. It's not the most elegant establishment, but the food is exquisite. When it was time, Lewis, Jasmine, and I headed to the restaurant. Upon arrival, we were guided to a private room that had been prepared for us. I'm going to say hello to Chef Brown. It's been a while since we've been to this restaurant. Before entering the private room, Lewis went to greet Chef Brown, leaving me alone with Jasmine. Just the two of us, me and Jasmine, in the private room. I felt uncomfortable and uneasy. Jasmine, as usual, was busy with her mobile phone. Just as I thought I should start a conversation, Jasmine spoke first. I came all this way to visit and this is the place? Kind of disappointing. Oh, why? The food hasn't even been served yet. This restaurant is really delicious, you know. And I tried to explain our family's connection to this restaurant, but Jasmine interrupted me, continuing her rant. I work in the city, you know, and the places I usually go to for private dining or entertaining guests are those trendy ones featured in magazines. I doubt that there are any stylish places like that in the countryside. And this place, it's so impoverished. Well, I guess that's what you get when you're living on a pension, Susan. Jasmine, how can you say such things? Please don't speak ill of this restaurant. I don't mind her belittling me for living on a pension. Let her say what she wants. But Jasmine has casually used my dear son, and now our family's cherished restaurant. She dares to call it impoverished. How long will Lewis continue to be at Jasmine's beck and call? Various thoughts I had been holding back swirled in my heart. Today, I've had enough. It's time to stand up to Jasmine. As my anger reached its peak, I took a deep breath, ready to respond. When we get home, Jasmine. The voice wasn't mine. It was Lewis. After greeting Chef Brown, Lewis returned and stood at the entrance of the private room. His eyes had a coldness I, as his parent, had never seen before. I will absolutely not tolerate anyone speaking ill of this restaurant. His eyes said, Leave this to me. Jasmine, this restaurant, you see, was started by my dad and mom. Really? Jasmine must have never seen Lewis so angry before. She couldn't continue her usual haughty behavior. My father was a chef. He and my mom started this restaurant together and put their hearts into it. It's a precious place for us, filled with cherished memories, and you call it impoverished? Indeed. This restaurant was started by John and me, just as Lewis said. John was a skilled chef, and his cooking attracted locals who kept the restaurant always full. It wasn't a place with constant lines, but people from afar would come, having heard about it. And when the restaurant became busier, Chef Brown, who was now in charge of the kitchen, was John's right-hand man. Well, I didn't know that. You don't need to be so angry, Lewis. Jasmine retorted to Lewis, her face strained. Whether you knew it or not, there are things that are okay to say and things that are not. Lewis's anger hadn't subsided yet. Today's Lewis was different from usual. As I watched a bewildered Jasmine, I remembered the days when Lewis was still in elementary school. He used to stop by the restaurant after school and often helped us out. He washed dishes with his small hands and cut vegetables next to John. Come to think of it, even after marrying Jasmine, it was always Lewis who helped me out. This was my chance. I decided to fight back. Jasmine, you know, I'm still the owner of this restaurant. I had planned to hand it over entirely to Chef Brown after John passed away. But Chef Brown, who was greatly indebted to John, insisted on looking after the restaurant until I turned 70. I still help out at the restaurant sometimes, and it provides enough income for me to live on my own. So I've arranged to start receiving my pension at 70. You keep belittling me for living on a pension, but guess what? I'm not even on a pension yet. Sorry to disappoint. Maybe I should add one more thing. Jasmine, I don't know what kind of lavish lifestyle you dream of with all your hard work, but I'm perfectly content with my life as it is, suited to my means. I thought you were living on a pension. So, as you can see, I'll start receiving my pension when I turn 70, and I still have money left by John that I haven't touched. I have no reason to be belittled by someone like you. Yes. I'm sorry. Great. I said it. The usually arrogant Jasmine in my home was now looking down, diminished. Perhaps she hadn't expected such a retort from the always gentle Lewis and me. Maybe John lent us his strength from beyond. Living within our means? Mom's right. Lewis murmured softly. Huh? I looked at Lewis, who was rummaging through his bag. He took out a bundle of envelopes and postcards and placed them in front of Jasmine. What is this? As Jasmine took the bundle and checked its contents, her face turned pale. No matter how hard you work outside, if you shop without restraint, you can't keep up with the payments, right? Wait, what? I didn't know these had arrived. I don't know anything about this. The figures, you're never home because of overtime and business trips. No time to check the mailbox, right? What was this exchange about? I looked at the bundle of mail Jasmine was holding. To my surprise, the bundle was a stack of dunning letters from credit card companies. And another thing, Lewis continued. About half of these reminders are for purchases at men's stores. I've never received anything like that from you, and I doubt you're wearing men's clothing. So what's all this about? No, that's not it. Lewis, don't say such awful things. Jasmine, explain this. I didn't need to hold back with Jasmine anymore. I pressed her with a firm voice. It was for a present. I bought it for someone I owe a lot to at work. I was in a hurry, so I paid for it. Looking at Jasmine, she was now red-faced and sweating profusely. Her heavy makeup seemed to be melting away, the foundation streaking. Her carefully applied makeup was rapidly deteriorating. For someone you owe a lot to. This person? Lewis took another envelope from his bag, slightly larger than the previous ones, and thrust it in front of Jasmine. What now? Jasmine hesitantly pulled out the contents of the envelope. Her face turned the bluest it had been all day. Wow, I never knew someone's face could change colors so drastically, from red to blue. My attention was drawn to an odd detail. The next moment, Jasmine raised her voice sharply. What is this? You investigated me? With all those dunning letters, I had to look into it. Lewis seemed resigned, yet composed. Inside the envelope were photos. There was Jasmine, walking arm in arm with a flashy young man, both smiling. Jasmine entering an apartment building, presumably the man's home, with him. And the most damning evidence was... well, let's leave it at that. Explain this, Jasmine! Lewis questioned Jasmine without changing his expression. What's wrong with taking a little break? I'm stressed from work. Lewis, you're older and too calm. You don't provide me with any excitement. To me, you're a house husband. House husband! I wouldn't have married an older guy like you otherwise. I need some excitement outside, or I can't stand it. Jasmine, now red-faced, blurted out. Stop it right now! Finally, my anger exploded. Jasmine, listen to me. How dare you let Lewis handle everything at home, treating him like a housewife, even though you're not supporting him. You said it when we first met, that you wanted to be a self-reliant and free couple. How is overspending to the point you can't pay for it being self-reliant? And thinking that infidelity is okay just because you're free? I don't want to see your face anymore. Get out of this restaurant right now. Susan, you don't need to get so angry. Quiet! Just get out! Lewis delivered the final blow. Apparently startled by what must have seemed like the first and last time Lewis and I showed such fury, Jasmine fled the restaurant. Is everything settled? The one who appeared was Chef Brown. Chef Brown, I'm sorry for causing a scene. It seems that Lewis had resolved to confront Jasmine before coming to the restaurant. He had gone to greet Chef Brown earlier to explain the situation. It's okay, Lewis. Susan, the food is ready, so I'll bring it over. Just the family now. Please take your time. Thank you. We appreciate it, Chef Brown. Lewis and I regained our composure and enjoyed the restaurant's food for the first time in a while. Eating brought back memories of John. Chef Brown had faithfully continued John's flavors. Afterwards, Lewis stayed at my house for a while, proceeding with divorce proceedings from Jasmine. With indisputable evidence, he left everything to a lawyer. Then, after finding a new home, Lewis moved his belongings out while Jasmine was at work. According to what Lewis heard from acquaintances, Jasmine continued to spend lavishly on men, even after the divorce. Her mailbox was always full. Her card payments lapsed, and eventually her workplace started receiving calls about it. This led to her workplace finding out about the affair and divorce, and she faced daily criticism at her job. She must be feeling very uncomfortable. But besides her credit card arrears, Jasmine also has to pay the damages she owes to Lewis. Despite the discomfort, she can't afford to quit her job. The money she worked so hard for is quickly disappearing. Jasmine, now short on funds, was swiftly abandoned by her boyfriend. All that remained were debts and a broken pride. With Jasmine gone, Lewis brought back peace to my life. And now, Teresa, Lewis's sister, was returning home temporarily from her overseas assignment. The very same Teresa for whom work was always first. Lewis planned to return home to coincide with her visit. I'm home. It's been a while, my dear home. Teresa arrived back home. I'm so tired from the long journey. Saying so, Teresa sat down on the sofa. Louis and I, reminded of a recent event, looked at Teresa in surprise. What's up with you, Mom and Big Brother? Oh, right, I need to greet Dad first. Watching Teresa head towards John's photo, I felt relieved. That evening, for the first time in a while, Louis, Teresa, and I gathered around the dinner table and had a wonderful time. After the meal, despite being tired, Teresa took the initiative to help with cleaning up. You seem to be doing well. Watching Teresa wash the dishes next to me, I accidentally voiced my inner thoughts aloud. With a puzzled look, Teresa turned to me as if to say, "What are you talking about?" When I looked back, Louis also had a slightly embarrassed smile on his face. I may never get to see my grandchildren, but everyone has their own way of life, whether it's building a family or living alone. I'm so fortunate to have such kind children and feel truly happy. Surely, John in heaven is also at peace. Until the day I join John, I vow to continue living a life that suits me and to enjoy my solitude. That was the promise I made to myself.